So just to give the people some perspective, like you were making these out of your basement when you started.
Oh yeah.
And
out of my kitchen actually.
Okay. So
kitchen. So we
went now, like, I would like you to tell them, like, cause you're in a lot of stores now.
Yep.
It's not just a little, I don't want to give the impression that it's just like this little tiny bar company, cause you've grown a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So probably it's 2023, probably early 2022, late 2021. I was still making them in my kitchen at home. Then kind of realized, okay, we need to make like more, like I can only make so much in my like one little oven. And so then I was like, okay, well, why don't I had basement, I had a spare room down there. So kind of renovated that room, bought some commercial stuff, put it in there, almost burnt my house down. I'm playing with those because again, no idea what I was doing, but I was like, okay, well, these are ovens, they cook things. So let's figure it out. So I was in there for probably about 6 months, if that, and then been in your guys' kitchen ever since.
Welcome to the winner's circle. If you made it here, it means you done put in the work, dude. Congratulations. You made it way past the basics. This goes for a massive celebration. Welcome to the winner's circle. We all winning here. We all winning here. We all welcome to the winner's circle.
Well, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So thanks, man.
I'm excited to have you. And for people who don't know, maybe tell them a little bit about yourself and who you are, what you do.
For sure. My name is Luke. I'm the owner operator of FreeBars. We are a hemp-based, allergy-safe energy bar, and we've been going for about, say, a year and a half now, maybe a little bit longer, but probably like officially we'll call it about a year and a half. So.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Super cool.
And what made you start FreeBars?
A lot of different reasons. I think, years ago, I'm an avid cyclist. So, I mean, like I've been mountain biking since I was like in my teens. I've done lots of racing, and usually like when you go, a lot of people will pack a bar, right? You go in the middle of nowhere. You got to be careful with what you pack, obviously, because there's, you only have so much room. You don't want to take like a bunch of weight. And it was always a challenge finding something that I could eat with the allergies that I have. And so it kind of just came a little bit out of necessity. And I think it was my dad a few years ago just kind of looked at me and said, you should figure that out. And I was like, okay, maybe. And then years later kind of decided to say, you know what, I'm going to see if I can figure that out. Let's see what this looks like. And for better or worse, that's kind of where we're at. So that's kind of how it started. So
a bar that... caters to all kinds of allergies, I guess, because
for sure.
Yeah. So many energy bars and processed food in general. Not that I'm saying these are processed, but you know what I'm saying.
Like for sure. Like I think it's honestly like it's a challenge. Like, I've lived with it my whole life, so I kind of like understand it, but like, people that have like, young families where like an allergy is kind of introduced, they kind of go through that, something's up, they talk to an allergist is like, you got to stay away from these things. Those young families, those moms and dads that have to figure out like what's safe to eat, right? Especially for, kids that are more athletic, like hockey, like they're in hockey and that kind of stuff. It's really hard. It's hard to find something that kind of fits the bill. There seems to be now, it's nice because there's lots of peanut free stuff. But there's not a whole ton of like dairy free stuff or gluten free or like soy free, egg free. There's kind of the way that it works. There's a list of priority allergens. And so there's very few products, if any, out there that are free of all that actually taste good too. So that's like a
and your bars are amazing. That's the thing that's like the most surprising because when I first met you and you're telling me like how you're making the ingredients you're putting in, I was like, it's probably gonna be some dry, bland bar, but no, they're extremely tasty. So
well, which is funny because like when I was like, okay, I'm gonna put a bit of a serious effort. I'm gonna see what I can figure out. Just like, I don't come from the food industry. So I was like, okay, let's see where this starts. But one of the first things I thought is like, okay, like I want it to taste good because it should, right? I mean, like that's a big part of, eating is having something that tastes good and satisfying. But when I was doing research, I was surprised, like the feedback I got overwhelmingly was none of this tastes good. And so I remember thinking like, then why are people eating this? Like if it doesn't taste good, right? It's kind of like, it's so unsatisfying. And I think what it came down to is, what the offer is sometimes it's just convenience. Sometimes it's just, I packed it in my pack. We're in the middle of nowhere. I just need something to eat. I don't really care if it doesn't taste good.
Like I know it's safe So I'll deal with.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, flavor. It just kind of gets me what I need. Like, ugh, right. But it's done. Right. And I was like, okay, so if I'm going to do this, I want them to like, and it feels funny to say, like, I want them to at least taste good. Right. So I think that was like a big thing, is just, making sure they taste good. Cause I think, a lot of people like myself that have allergies, sometimes we kind of got to make a bit of a sacrifice for that taste. Right. And I was like, there's got to be a way to do it. Right. And so thankfully kind of figured it out. I will say the first ones we did make did not taste good.
Did you start like whipping these up in your kitchen and trying different recipes, or how did it go?
For sure. I mean, it started with kind of saying like, okay, what would be in a bar? And I think the first one had like maybe 25 ingredients. So like packing in like gluten-free flour and like, baking soda and all these things. And then just kind of realizing like, okay, it doesn't actually need to have that. We don't need to have this long list of ingredients. We can have like the coconut one has 5 things in it, right? So we can have a shorter list of ingredients. And those first few ones were rough. I feel for the first few people that kind of met me at the farmer's market the first time. I had no idea what I was doing. And just kind of like saying like, hey, do you want to try this? Because they were a little rough, but they've come a long way, which is good, and they're going to go a long way too.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, there's no better way to test it than being at a farmer's market.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I know. Have you ever heard the story of Chicken Salad Chick who owns that franchise?
Oh yeah. I've listened to that podcast.
It's super cool because she like she just kept making different salads and taking them to like all these hairdressers because they talk the most. And what she did is she waited till like all of them, when they took a bite, like everyone was like, oh my gosh, like this is so good.
Yeah.
And then she knew she had the salad, and then started giving them out to like people that talk and let word spread.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it's kind of, it's funny. It's almost like an old school way to kind of like start a business, is to like just do it like literally person to person and at a farmer's market. And honestly, one of the reasons it really started the farmer's market was that it's extremely low risk. It's like $50 to kind of sit there. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You're not out thousands of dollars on trying to do something, or like you haven't, spent a ton of money making this crazy website and all these things. And I was just like, well, let's see if there's even an appetite or an audience for this. And that's why I kind of thought the farmers markets. But I think like I've put it on our Instagram before, but like I've had literally people tell me to F off because they taste so good. Like, and it's happened with me, with my staff. Like it's a very funny moment because everybody, same expectation you have is like, well, like there's nothing really good in it, so it's probably not going to taste good. And we do sample at farmers markets, and so some people are very skeptical when they try. But it's cool that moment of discovery, and they kind of look at you and they're like fuck off, this is so good, right? And they're like, give me a dozen, right? And they keep coming back week after week. It's a very satisfying part of the business.
It's kind of nice too that like less is more. Like you don't need 25 ingredients. Like
no, for sure, right? And I think honestly, like when you talk to people about like protein bars or energy bars, their expectation is that there's like full of like, just stuff that's not good for you.
Yeah.
Right. Like
even if they say like, no sugar, they, everything else under the sun.
It's got everything else, right? Like it's got like aspartame or whatever. But I think, so one, people are already expecting it to not taste good, and they're expecting it to be full of stuff that's not good for them. And so actually there's a coffee shop in town called Crumb Coffee Shop. They're on the south side. And I dropped them off trying to like say like, hey, it'd be cool if we could sell our bars in your spot. And they were like, nope, we don't do bars. They're always full of garbage, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, ours aren't. So try them, take a look. And I kind of walked away. I was like, well, probably not going to sell them in this coffee shop. And then they sent me an email saying, hey, these are actually like, we want clean products. We only sell clean products. Can we have some of your bars in our store? Right. So I think it's funny just how much the public perception is that these things are bad for you. Right. Because a lot of them are.
Yeah.
Right. But so it just open up an opportunity for us to kind of find something, or to kind of put something out there that's clean. Right. And good for you to eat. So
that's a nice part too, because I mean, you go to Superstore, I mean, there's like a whole wall of bars. Yeah. It's a hard market to get into because there's, but again, there is that market for you because of how little ingredients you put in them, how healthy they are.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so. When I started, I remember standing in a Superstore going like, oh, let's see how many they have. And it's like literally like an aisle. And I'm going like, oh man, what am I doing? Like, this is going to be tough. But we're eking out, and we're still in the trenches, but we're eking out a space for us, which is awesome. And I have like a couple staff now. We're getting like stores are reordering. People are constantly reordering. It's cool.
And you're getting orders coming in from different places now too.
Oh yeah, all over the place, man. Like I've had, we've had some from the States. We get a lot from, it seems like we get a lot from Ontario, a lot from Quebec, which is kind of weird, right? I always try to find out, like, how did you hear about us? But it's cool to kind of just see that there is a bit of an appetite for it, for sure. So
yeah, I mean, more and more people I find are becoming like, they want to know what's in their food. They want to know where it's coming from. You know what I mean? So like it leaves the door wide open.
100%. And I think like, you know, it's, I mean, similar to where kind of the space that Bite Me feels like there's not a lot of options when it comes to these things. Right. So it at least gives us space to kind of like put something out there and say like, hey, this could, you know, help people with kind of what they're eating. Right.
Yeah.
And I know for us, like I've had a few like really heartfelt messages from like, you know, like moms who are like struggling to find something that my kid will eat. That's nice, right? Or that looks like it tastes good. Or even like I had one mom say like, it's nice that they look good, like the packages look good, so my kids aren't like embarrassed by the food they're bringing to school because it has to be allergy safe. And that stuff just pulls on your heartstrings and is like rocket fuel, right?
Yeah.
So
I always tell people like the biggest compliment I can get is when they're like, yeah, my kids loved your food, because like they're the pickiest. So if they like it, then I'm super happy.
Yeah, 100%. So I think like that's a massive thing. And like, you know, starting your own thing, I mean, you guys have gone through it. There's a lot of pain, a lot of sacrifice. There's moments where you're kind of looking in the mirror going, the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? Especially in my case, I was like, I had a good career, was working at a great spot, decided to say like, well, screw that. Let's try this. But you know, those little moments, I think what really make it worth it, right? Beyond everything else, for sure. So
for sure. I mean, we have similar stories too.
Yeah.
You know, I came from the oil field background, making good money, right? But I knew that I didn't want to do that forever, and I knew I loved health and fitness. And so.
Well, I think for me it was I always knew I wanted my own thing. I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Right. And it was.
But that's the pressure of like the crap. Because when when I used to listen to all these podcasts while I was working up in the oil sands, you know, I was like, oh, you need to find your passion. You need to find, like, I had no idea that food was going. I just knew that, like, okay, I like health and fitness. Yeah. Right. So I took a chance on something, which was the franchise that I bought into to get started. Yeah. Right. And I just grew to love it. Like, but did I know that I was going to love that? No. And like, there's so much, like, you got to find what you love. It's like, you know, pick something in the, you know what you like to do. Well, pick something in that and try it and go from there.
For sure. And I think a big thing is like, you know, and I think just, you know, working with you guys, there's a lot of the people in a lot of your customers, a lot of people hopefully listen to this are kind of in that spot where they're like, I know I want to do my own thing. I might not know what that is, but I'm kind of open to the possibilities. And so like, at least for me, it was kind of right in front of my face. It was kind of like, well, you're allergic to like peanuts, like just make something you can eat. Right. And try to sell that. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should try that. But, you know, it was definitely like, it was terrifying, right? Like to do, which is, I think, a good thing. I remember, being at the first time I was at the farmer's market, standing there with like a table with like a $5 Walmart tablecloth, had some cool signage, which was nice. But like the bars themselves were like shrink wrapped, not exactly the greatest tasting ones. And I remember sitting there thinking like, what the hell are you doing? You have a good career. You have a kid at home. Like, what are you doing here? And I remember being terrified, but it's like, you just kind of got to push through those moments and say like, okay, you know, it doesn't have to be today that I'm going to make this massive change, but at least I'm moving forward. At least I'm exploring, at least for, you know, who I am as a person, or my soul, call it. It's satisfying for that. Right. And like, without that, I'd rather live with like, you know, trying to start a business and failing it than regret. Yeah. Of saying like, I never even tried.
I mean, I know you're still working while this is growing, but like, you know, I completely left and made not even a fraction of what I was making while I was there. And I had those moments too. There was like, what have I done? Like I was making all this money and, you know, I was comfortable, but I just loved what I was doing. And I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I just love this so much that even I'm willing to make less money, a lot less money, just to do what I love, just to get up and go somewhere that I'm happy every day. Well,
and it's funny because a lot of people, like you see a lot of people that have been super successful. They're running like companies that are worth 10, 15, $20 million. And they're like, you know, happiness has to be an important part of it. It's not just about the money. And you're like, sure, man, you got $20 million. You can say that, but like, it's true.
Yeah.
It's very true. Like, I think
you get to that 20 million because you're loving what you're doing.
Exactly.
Because if you didn't love, you'd be on to the next thing.
Yeah. And I don't think you can, it's hard to work if you're not passionate about it, about some aspect of it, whether it's kind of like your individual contribution to a group or like how you kind of change like the company or, where I'm at, where it's like, hey, like this is your thing. You got to run it. You got to keep it moving. You have people working for you. They got to get paid. You got to keep this machine moving. And so like, I mean, you've seen me when I'm here, like my back is like broken and I'm like, we're still making bars today because we have to. And like, that's where that passion comes in. Cause those are the moments where it'd be easy just to be like, nah, you know what? I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Right. I've seen you here till 2-3 in the morning.
Yeah. Making bars, I haven't had any of those, thankfully, for a long time. I got a really good crew with me now. So it just makes life way easier and faster. And I mean, we're hustling, we're sweating when we're back there because we're trying to make as many as we can in the time we got. But it's the satisfaction to who you are is massive.
Yeah,
well, that's like the biggest thing I can take away from it at this moment is it just feels so good. It just feels really great.
I think with social media too, there's like people that think like it's just on social media, like everyone looks like this overnight success.
Oh yeah.
But it's like you and I can relate to like, this is like years in the making and grinding
for sure.
And making no money and,
Yeah.
But
well, I was just
the passion that drives you.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually just talking to the accountant that we have. We were just talking taxis and that stuff. And like, I actually started the company in like 2019 and I was like, oh man, that was like 4 years ago, right? Like that was a while ago, but that's when it was like, okay, let's, first step is, well, we should probably incorporate, we should probably grab the name. Right. And so let's do that. And then it's like, well, let's try getting a recipe and maybe selling a few. Let's see what that looks like. And you just kind of, you kind of move forward. And I think, yeah, like you said, a lot of people, it's like that overnight success and it's not, there's no such thing. I can't remember who said it, but someone said, luck is a combination of talent and hard work. Right. So there's no such thing as luck. It's, you gotta be talented in what you do. You gotta be passionate about it and you gotta work hard. That's what brings you those lucky opportunities. Right. Yeah. So you're never going to get ahead by not showing up. Right. So you got to put yourself in those places where you are going to show up and it's going to be pain and it's going to be painful. It's going to be tough, but when your head hits that pillow at the end of the day, it feels great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not like one path to success either. It's like, I mean, I'm more of like a burn the boat type of guy where like there's, people like you who can continue to work and get the side hustle going until it takes over.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's, the at least for me, and I think a lot of people get in the same boat. Like I've got 2 kids now. I got one on the way, probably like 2-3 weeks away. And, so I have certain responsibilities and I've made commitments to, other people. And I want to fulfill those commitments while I kind of do my own thing. And it makes it a balancing act. It makes it, a lot of like, okay, I got an hour, between things. I got to make this hour super impactful, but I think it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah,
for sure to do. And like I said, I had a moment when my first was born, and you'll probably go through the same right away here. But a big thing was, looking at yourself in the mirror saying, who do I want to be? Because I got this little, like, I have a kid now that's really going to like I'm their whole world. And how do I want them to like explore this world? And I got to teach them what's in the world. And you look in the mirror and you say, who am I? And one of the reasons I started, saying like, okay, I got to figure out what I want my own thing is, I had this thought of like, okay, if my kids are kind of meeting that person that they're going to fall in love with one day, and they're just talking about like, family and this stuff, it's like, oh, who's your dad? What does he do? Right. And, I would so much rather my kids say he tried to do something and it failed versus, he always had good ideas, but he couldn't do it. Right. Like I look at that and I go like, that's what I want to leave. That's where I want to be. Right. And it's a tough moment when those moments happen, but like, you can turn it into a positive and say like, I'm just going to push through it as hard as I can. So
I've seen it a lot in Fort McMurray where like a lot of the guys I was working with, they all had like I shouldn't say all, but a lot of them had like other dreams other than just that. But like once life happened with kids and stuff, they just they feel like the shackles are on, but they can't go like
the golden handcuff conversation.
Right? It's like you're a prime example of like, you know, you're balancing a full-time job, you have kids, a wife and kids, like and you're still getting, I mean, it's become more than a side hustle now. It's grown a lot in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And I mean, like actually, it's a good time. Like we grew, our revenue was 400% year over year. Right. So, I mean, like that's a big, I mean, we're not talking like millions of dollars at this point. We're not there yet, but like, that's significant, right? And I actually, like, I have people that work for me, and I'm very dedicated to making sure that I can pay them because they're, you know, coming along on this journey with me that I don't know where it's going to end up. I know it's going to get to a point. I kind of have in my head, I think I know where it's going to go, but you never really know. I mean, right? You kind of like, let's start, see where it goes. But yeah, it's tough, and those golden handcuffs are tough, and that's actually why they exist, right? Like companies, you know, don't necessarily want people to have that ability to say like, well, I'm going to have to put you here, so they'll pay you more, they'll make you more comfortable, which is fair. You're working for them, but you know, it's a tough scenario to find oneself in, and at least for me, you know, it was about like, what am I doing just forward momentum? Like I don't have to figure out a dozen flavors today, right? Like, can I get one solid flavor? And so for us, like for probably about 8 months of our first year, we had one flavor, right? And you think like, okay, you've got a bar with one flavor, that's all you're selling. It's like, well, yeah, because that's all we can figure out. And at least we're selling it. At least we're getting it out there, right? And so now we've got 4. We've probably got like 2 more on the queue, or in the queue that I'm working on. So now it's just like, okay, now we can expand, but you know, start small, start trying something, right? Like I remember getting home from the farmers markets, cause we're still in them. We still do them, but like exhausted. It's a long day. You're on your feet, you're talking all day. I've been in the St. Albert one. It's all outside. So it's hot, right? Like, and you can't step away from your booth. You got to stay there. You got to, you know, sell your stuff, and you get home and you're exhausted, but it's a good feeling. It's a lot like a really intense workout or a really long hike. You get that really satisfying moment, right? So yeah, that's what keeps me going right now. So for sure.
Feels like when I owned like the restaurant, because people are walking in all the time, and you have to be on your game 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, because everyone, like, people want to talk to you.
Oh, for sure.
They get to know who you are. Then they're coming back to see you. And it's just like at the end of the day, I would be driving home with like in just pure silence.
Yeah.
And just
you're just tired. You're exhausted, right? Yeah. The same thing, right? Like, you know, you're trying to like, I mean, it's probably same thing. You feel sometimes repetitive because you're kind of having the same conversation over and over, but like you want to connect with people. You're excited about what you're doing. You want to tell them, and you want to be like, hey, this is super cool. Like if you've got an allergy, or like, honestly, like for us, you know, a lot of people that buy from us don't necessarily have those allergies, but it tastes good. And they're like, this tastes good, super clean. I'm eating it, right? Like I think you're a prime example of like the best coconut customer we have, right? You know, cause it's like, it's tasty, and it's got a low list of ingredients, but you know, you want to convey that, like what you're doing to them. And like, and I mean, similar, like to you get those people that are like massive advocates, and they're like, oh, I told my friend about this and I gave them this to try. And like, that's amazing. Right. So, yeah.
And we have people like that too. And I like when they come in, like I always try to take care of them. So
oh yeah.
Hey, here's a shirt or a sweater, you know, a couple free meals, or if they ask me for something, it's like, I'm happy to help, because they're just out promoting you all the time everywhere they go. Yeah.
Yeah. I just had a conversation actually. I was at one of our farmers markets, and a customer came up, and she was texting me saying, can you hold some? I'm like, sure. So had the staff hold some, and she was like, oh, you know, can I grab a couple more? I want to give them to one of my friends. And then we're talking, she's like, oh, and I'm just like, just take them. Like, don't even buy them. Like, just take them. Like the amount of help that just, I call it like random people want to give you is amazing. And like, I know before I started, like there was people that would say like, oh, I'm thinking of this. I'd be like, if you need anything, let me know, I'll help. Right. Cause I know when I get to that point, I'd love to have people that can help me. Right. So yeah. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. It's
a wild journey.
Yeah. And well, I think we're still, if I look at where the business is like today, it's definitely still very much call it like in the trenches. Like we're still out there hustling. Like it's, you know, we're getting orders, but you know, it's not at a point where we can say like, okay, this is call it like a big business. We can start to really staff up and equipment up. I have a great business partner, so we got good financial backing. So if we need to buy equipment and all these things, the capital is there. But you know, it's still kind of early stages and still in the trenches for sure.
Yeah. That's one thing we could touch on too, is a business partner, because when I was like listening to these podcasts, and like, if you want to get started, it's like, you need to find a mentor or something, but nobody wants to mentor you or help you until they've seen you take some action.
For sure.
Like, so just like, cause there's a lot of people, it's like, hey, I want to do this, but they never act on it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, take those steps to get the business going, show that you're going to the farmers markets or whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And then someone will come into your life. Then someone's like happy to help. Right.
Yeah. And it kind of comes out of the ethos, right? Of like, there's someone out there who wants to. And so, I mean, for me, my wife was working for a company, Barricades and Signs, and the owner there had a very entrepreneurial spirit. And my wife was like, hey, you should give these, give me some, I'll take them to the office. I'll have them taste. And he called me, he's like, we should go for lunch. And I've talked to him, I talked to him a few times over the years. And he literally said like, hey, if you need money, like I can be that guy for you for this. I don't want to run it. Like I see you're passionate about what you're doing. If you need money, I can help you kind of get there. And I mean, for me, that was like, okay, this is actually an idea that someone's kind of willing to kind of buy into. Awesome. But also then an immense sense of responsibility of like, okay, it's a bit easier to get money for this. I better start making this actually work and kind of pushing forward. And so, I mean, it's been awesome. There's been times where I'm like, hey man, this is what I'm doing. He's like, okay, we need to order you this stuff. And then, a few days later, a couple grand worth of stuff shows up, which is awesome to have. And just to have that, just know in the background that like, okay, if I need something, I can get it. Right. So yeah, it's been huge. And I think a lot of people look at, I think you and I probably are a lot of people that are kind of in that headspace of, wanting to start their own thing. I think unfortunately, a lot of what we consume is like software companies. And so they're talking about, you got to go to VCs and you got to get Series A, a funding round and all of these things to do an idea. And it's like, maybe if you're starting a software company in like San Francisco, but like here, there's probably people that are like, hey, you know what? Like, this is cool. How do I buy in? What's that look like? Right. So I think it's funny because like, I think we get clouded by a lot of like these crazy success stories that are like, Google's bought in or this or that. And like, awesome. Those are cool. Those exist. But like, for the rest of us that aren't necessarily like, writing code all day long and we want to start our own thing, there's still ways to kind of find someone that can help you finance it. So
for sure. I just feel like if you want it bad enough, it'll happen.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I got the first restaurant, it's like, I didn't have all the money to open that.
Yeah.
And it's just I just kept pushing and pushing, going to multiple banks and then showing up with like no business plan. They're like laughing at me, like, why are you here? And, then, okay, now I need to do a business plan. And
I think that's just the learning journey of like showing up and saying like, okay, I don't know what I need here, but I know that I want it.
Yeah.
So tell me what I need, Mr. Banker. Hey, tell me what I need. Okay. Is this it? Right. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think like just even for us, like just learning like, okay, now we're operating in a commercial kitchen. What do we need? We need this paperwork. We need this. We need that. Like, okay, we need these certifications. We need that. Looking at if we're, talking now, okay, if we want to open this up internationally, what's that look like? What do we need? Right. And so I don't know the answers, but I know I can find the answers. Right. So,
yeah. I don't know if you'll agree, but like just getting in and doing it, like they don't teach those lessons in school that you're going to learn.
Nothing.
Like I think when that restaurant closed, I had to pay back roughly about $100. Let's say I lost about $150,000.
Yep.
It took me years to pay it back.
Yeah.
And I had to pay it in full. I was personally guaranteed on it, but I still tell people to this day, like you cannot buy those lessons in school.
No.
Like that was priceless to me.
Yeah.
Everything that I learned in that year, not knowing anything and having no one to help and just having to figure out like, how do we do payroll and how do we apply for a GST? Like just everything. You just got to do it.
Yeah. And I think like doing something is the best way to learn it for sure. Right. And I think there's this, everyone has always got this massive fear of failure of like well, what if this doesn't work? Right. Well, what if it does? Right. Like I think everybody just gets very scared of like, they get stuck in this headspace of like, oh, if it doesn't work, I might lose my house. I might lose this. It's like, well, what if it does work? Right. Yeah. Like that's how you got to think and just have some confidence in yourself to say, I can probably figure out most of this, or I can probably get it to a point where it's not going to wreck me. I can restart. Right. Like it's just, I'm secured this way, or I'm secured that way, or whatever it is, just to start. And I think, as you go, you'll start to realize, like, and when I started to realize and talking to a lot of other kind of, people like you, business owners, or people that are entrepreneurs, it's like nobody really knows what they're doing, right? Everybody's just in the same spot of like trying to figure it out, right? And they might just know like 10% more than you, and they're just like, hey, have you tried this? I'm like, oh, no, I haven't, right? There's a company in town I've talked to a few times. They manufacture these little snacks, and we were talking about like packaging. And we've got this cool little sealing machine that I found like for like $300 on Alibaba. It's a little rough now, but it's still working. But she's like, hey, where'd you find that? And I sent it to her, and it's just like, and I'm like, man, these people have been doing this for like a couple of years. How do they not figure this out? And it's like, cause nobody knows what they're doing. Yeah. Everybody's just trying to figure out where they're at, what their next steps are, kind of going down that path. Right. So I think once you kind of realize that, you're like, okay, well then I'm just kind of part of that group of just trying to figure out what's going on. Right. Yeah. So
I mean, I'm 5 years in and still learning every single day.
Oh yeah, for sure, man.
And sometimes when I'm going through something, well, actually you helped me last time because we have a mutual friend who has a business that's 10 times more successful.
Yeah.
And you were telling me some of their struggles. And it's just like no matter what level you're at, there's challenges, there's struggles, there's things you're going through.
Right. Just, I think, good businesses are powered by people, right? And people are messy. It's just like it is. Like as much as we want to try to like leave emotions at home or like say like, okay, when I walk in this door, I'm one person, when I walk out, I'm another. It's not really the case, right? And so I think like, people are messy and they impact your business, and that's okay. That's what it's going to be. So you just got to manage those people. But, the problems don't go away. Like, I mean, can you imagine like what kind of problems like a $1 billion company kind of has with those kinds of things? I mean, obviously they keep it under wraps. They try to from the public perspective, but there's no such thing as like a non-problematic company, right? So,
and I always admire the business owners that know that the people are the business.
Oh yeah.
Like I wouldn't be where it is without all the amazing people we have here or have had in the past that have, helped along the way. Everyone served their purpose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm never upset if like someone here, like it wants to better themselves or they want to go on to something else. Like I'm always supported because I know what it was like to be where I was working and I was making great money, but like at the end of the day, I just wanted to go do something that made me happy. So, or to better my life. And so if anyone ever even wants to leave here, for any reason, but hopefully they leave better than they came in.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I've been pretty lucky to get some pretty awesome people that are helping me now. And so I've got a few staff and they're awesome. They're dedicated. They understand why we're doing what we're doing. They come and help in the kitchen. They do like the hard work. And it's awesome. I wouldn't be able to, when your primary kind of revenue generator for us is the farmers markets, I cannot be in two spots at once. Like I haven't figured that part out yet, but so I have to get people, and I've got great people that are dedicated. We get them motivated the right way. So, I mean, like that just from a like comfort level of like, okay, like I can't be standing here. Do I have someone that can, sell it as good as I can or communicate it as good as I can? To have that, like I sleep way better.
Yeah. And you take care of them, even if it's at the cost of like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, like
money.
I'm pretty candid. Like a lot of people ask, I don't pay myself. I haven't paid myself $1.
Yeah.
And I don't intend to for a while. And I would so much rather say I have great people that I can spend the money on them. We can buy some new stuff versus me saying I'm going to cut myself a check.
Yeah.
Right. Like, cause I'm in it for the long game, right? I'm in it for like, the next 10, 15, 20 years of wherever this is going to go. So right now for me, it's like, it's a non-issue to say like, I at least don't have to pay myself. And I'm like, I'm not even going to if I wanted to right now. So much rather buy something or say, okay, we can hire some more staff. We can go here now. We can do this. So
just to give the people some perspective, like you were making these out of your basement when you started.
Oh yeah.
And
out of my kitchen actually.
Okay. So kitchen.
So
but now like, I would like you to tell them like, cause you're in a lot of stores now.
Yep.
It's not just a little, I don't want to give the impression that it's just like this little tiny bar company, cause you've grown a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So probably it's 2023, probably early 2022, late 2021. I was still making them in my kitchen at home. Then kind of realized, okay, we need to make like more, like I can only make so much in my like one little oven. And so then I was like, okay, well, why don't I had basement, I had a spare room down there. So kind of renovated that room, bought some commercial stuff, put it in there, almost burnt my house down. I'm playing with those because again, no idea what I was doing, but I was like, okay, well, these are ovens, they cook things. So let's figure it out. So I was in there for probably about 6 months. if that, and then been in your guys' kitchen ever since. And even since going to your kitchen for a while, it was probably for the first few months, it was just me. And it was getting nuts. There was a few moments where my wife was like, listen, man, like you're here, you're exhausted. You're not able to be kind of like, a husband or a dad. And so that was like, okay, you got to hire some people to help you. And I was so scared to hire people because I'm like, is anybody going to get this? Are they going to be passionate about it? Are they going to be able to sell these things? And the first hire was my dad. I'll say unpaid hire was my dad. And I remember watching him sell for 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't that complicated. It's an energy bar, right? It's not something super complicated. And now maybe by the time this airs, we will be in our own space, which is crazy to think about. I wouldn't even think that we'd even be there yet. I remember having a conversation with my business partner and a contractor early on, and he was like, it's going to be about 70, 80 grand to build you a space. And both of us looked at each other, and I was like, I didn't see it far enough then to be like, okay, that justifies the investment. So I was like, let's start small. And now it's just like, I look at it and I go like, well, 70 grand, like for a kitchen, like might only last us a year. Right. So, I mean, like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But you're in, like grocery stores.
Yeah. So lots of Sobeys, lots of Safeways. We're in a bunch of coffee shops. You can find us online. We have a distributor out of Quebec that's with our, he's the guy that makes the honey replacement or apple crisp flavor. So he's selling them for us out there. And I'm thinking once we move into the new space, the nice thing for us is our capacity will increase massively because we'll have kind of 24/7 access. So if we get big orders, we can actually start pursuing stores and say like, okay, instead of saying, what do we have that we can sell them today? We can say, I can go sell them and we can go make it right away, turn that store right away. So I think we're probably in about, I want to say about 16-ish stores. And then obviously we're in the St. Albert Farmers Market, which is a massive farmers market, Old Strathcona and the Bountiful Farmers Market. We have opportunities to do more, but I just don't have the staff for it now, so we need to find some good people. So if anybody listening is looking to sell some bars for some extra cash on the weekends.
Good sales pitch
yeah.
to get somebody to come on board.
Yeah, exactly. So we need some good people. So
because you're looking to go down to Calgary as well, right?
Yeah, I think I'd love to go down there. There's some people that I know that are kind of down there. There's it's a very different from the farmers market perspective, because from what I understand, they have kind of more their public market, so you need to have a commercial kitchen. So if you're like that kind of entrepreneur that's like, I'm going to make this at home, your really only avenue is a farmer's market. You're allowed to do that. So in Calgary, I don't really know how many of them are actual farmers markets, but like we could sell in them. So we're probably going to go down there. But I've talked to actually a few distributors in the States, and there's a pretty healthy appetite to get it down there once we can kind of get our kitchen up to snuff and do those kinds of things. But yeah, I think our next step is not necessarily going to be like how many more farmers markets we can do. It's, how can we find a distributor that we can partner with that can say like, okay, I'm going to put you in 75 stores to try, or at least knows what that game looks like. Cause it's, selling at a farmer's market, it's cool. It's fun. It's awesome to connect with that end consumer. And part of like them buying is us talking to them, but how's the sell on a shelf? And so far, thankfully, it has been selling well on a shelf. We've got cool displays, but like, how's that look if we're going to say, we're going to sign up 100 stores versus me saying, getting one at a time type thing. So, yeah.
Do you credit, when you're not there physically to sell it, do you credit like the sales to some of the marketing or the displays that you built?
For sure. I mean, it's funny how quickly you realize store placement and displays make a massive difference. I actually talked to an owner of a grocery store in St. Albert, and he was walking me around the store. He's like, oh yeah, we figured out that if we cut off the top of this box, it increases sales by like 300% of this item. I'm like, what? Like, it's really that like crazy? And we walked in the bar section. He's like, if I properly merchandise this, it would double the sales in here. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So like, any of the stores that I've gone into, I've said like, I'd love to put a display. If some ends up on a bottom shelf, it's not going to sell, right? Like, we're just not at that point yet where we have like mass market, like understanding of like who we are and what we offer, right? So displays are definitely the way to go. With that obviously comes, we got to make a display. We got to find it. We got to put it in the right spot, like all those things. But for sure that marketing makes a massive difference.
Yeah. And you have a marketing background for those who don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
it makes that part of the business easy.
It does, but it doesn't really benefit you that much. Like, because you can't necessarily do as much advertising as say like someone like us can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So do you want, we can go down that road.
Well, it's up to you.
So I mean, obviously for you guys, handle a lot of your advertising, and a big part of it is online. And I think for us, a big, one of our primary ingredients is hemp hearts. And because of hemp's association with marijuana, we have been banned from advertising on some online platforms. And so, which is frustrating, to say the least, but, I think just got to look forward, just got to navigate and be like, okay, if we can't do that, what else can we do? If we're going to say we're going to spend X dollars on, Facebook ads, what if we spend it X dollars on putting someone in a farmer's market here? Can we be as effective or generate as many sales or build the brand that way? So you just got to figure out how to navigate it. And I think that's how it is operating a business is like something comes up, you're like, well, this sucks. Like, how do we navigate around this? And then you kind of just say like, okay, well, what if we did this and see how that works?
Well, it's fun for me because, social media is, it's free to a certain extent.
Yep.
Obviously you can pay for ads, but it's a really easy way to get your product out there.
For sure.
So you're kind of like, you got to go back a little in time and go like kind of old school marketing, and find different ways to make this thing go.
Yeah.
You've done a really great job at it.
Yeah. So. Which is kind of fun, honestly. Like it is, I definitely battle with it personally. Like I love working the farmers markets, but I know like I got to do other things with my time and I got to have good staff that can sit in those farmers markets and sell the bars. Cause I really want to, I'd love to sit there and be like, yeah, this is what I do, but I literally cannot be in two places at once. So it's like, or three or four, as many as we decide. So, that aspect is fun, but, at least my time can be spent doing other things, but doing that old school way, there's a lot of value in it. There's a lot of value, especially like early on, like when we had the one flavor, I was changing the recipe every week based on what people were saying. They'd be like, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And like all of our flavors, save for the apple crisp, came from people saying, you should try that. What if you did this? And I was like, oh yeah, maybe. Like, we have a mint flavor, which is my favorite. And someone was like, you should try to make like a chocolate mint version. I remember thinking like, man, I don't know, with the hemp hearts, with like oats, like this minty flavor, is it going to work? And tried it. And I was like, oh yeah, this works.
Yeah. Which is my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
some think you're crazy if you're a chocolate mint person, but
it's either you love or you hate. That's what we say to farmers markets. You're either going to like say like, this is the best thing I've ever had, or you're going to look at me like I've offended you by offering you a chocolate mint thing. But no, it's the value that you get, even if you kind of step back and you say like, as yourself, as like I'll call it like in charge of the marketing for this, the value that you get by just talking to that person who's consuming your product, whatever it is, massive, right? You can listen to like how they talk about it and you can put that into like your content, or you can say like, okay, if I'm going to do social media post, I'm going to word it this way, because that's literally how someone described how something tasted, right? Or how they used whatever you're selling. And that's massive. The value in that's massive. And at least starting out, like, especially going like, I don't even know if anyone's going to really like it. Of course, my mom said she loved it. I mean, you've met my mom. She's awesome. So she's like, oh, I love it. It tastes good. I'm like, well, you have to. You're my mom. But are people actually willing to give me money for this? Right. And so being able to, early on really say, well, instead of taking a route of like, let's refine this recipe and launch this thing that we think is kind of like perfect, let's start and then refine as we go. And as we go, it'll grow. And I'm a firm believer, and a lot of people have heard me say it, perfection is the enemy of progress. And so if you're trying to get this thing like perfect, like you're not going to move forward. You're not going to get it out there, right? And I think like, especially for us where FreeBars is at, like we got revenue coming in. We've got enough that we can like, I can hire people and that can fuel the next phase of our growth, versus saying, I've been working on this recipe for 2 years. Don't have a dollar for it, but I've spent a lot of money in it, right? Not even knowing if people are going to like it, if there's an audience for it, like those kinds of things. So yeah.
I mean, feedback is everything. I love it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, sometimes like if a friend tells me like, oh, well, like, I don't want to like upset you. I'm like, no, please, like tell me, because I want to fix whatever it is that's 100%. Going on. Like, don't I never shy away from it. We actually had a customer, leave us like, pretty nasty review on Facebook. I literally reached out to him and I had a half an hour phone call with him that afternoon.
Yeah.
Like half an hour, just like, hey, like what's going on? Like, here's, listen to his side. And I was like, okay, well, here's our side and here's what's going on. And by the end, like, it was a great conversation. Yeah. I took a lot away from it. And he was like, I can't believe you called me.
Yeah.
I was like, but it's important to me. Like, I don't want to lose any customer at all.
100%. Yeah.
And it's like, it would suck that someone would go without giving us the chance to fix, because, all I want to do is just continually make this place better.
Well, yeah. And I think like you and I are in the same understanding of like, it's just about like trying to make it better every single time you do it. Right. Like, we've just changed the chocolate chip, this recipe just changed recently. And it's just like, we're just trying to make it a little bit better as we go. Like, I'm a firm believer that everything could always be better. Right. But we got to get stuff out there now, get the feedback on it, see what people think, and then start kind of moving forward. Like, I don't think I'm at a point where, you look at like the big bar manufacturers where they're like, this is the recipe, we do not change it ever. Right. I'm like, we're not there. Right. We're going to iterate. We're going to try different things. We're going to try to find like where things are perfect and then kind of go like, okay, if this is good enough, let's focus on the next thing. And you kind of have this constant cycle of like innovating your products. Right. Yeah. Like I know with the apple crisp, that went through a lot of iterations before we really nailed it down. And it was like, it actually took quite a while to kind of figure it out how to make it work. But now that it does, I mean, it's like half of our sales are that one.
I was going to say, that's like your top seller.
By a long shot.
Yeah.
And so, but now that we've got it, it's like, okay, how do we maybe do another flavor? And then we'll kind of go back and say like, okay, maybe let's there's some feedback about the coconut. Like most people are okay with it, but how do we make it just a little bit better? Right. So yeah.
So big. I know Brody and I were just chatting last week about someone we know that's just like, doesn't want to take any feedback for anything. And it's just, it's tough, like especially when it's coming from someone that that like has good intentions.
Oh yeah, for
sure.
What
I mean, it's like you need to be open to this stuff so you can constantly continue.
Yeah, and I think what happens is a lot of people like put their identity on with what they do, right? And they can't disconnect them, right? So it's kind of like if you're kind of giving them feedback about something they've done, they take it personally because they've made it part of who they are, right? So whereas it's like, no, we're just like, we're talking about like something that you made. It's not who you are, right? Like my background is in like you said, marketing and design. All right. And it's very easy when you're like a graphic designer or any of that kind of function to really take it personally, because you do pour your heart and soul into these things.
Yeah.
But you got to realize like you're not your work. You're not your words. Like that's a saying, right? Like that kind of a thing. So it's just, you got to be able to separate for yourself and go like, okay, well, the feedback is to make my stuff better. Right. That's valuable feedback. Right. And I want to make my stuff better. Don't we all? So yeah.
I'm glad we're all open to feedback here.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like we've gone through like, oh man, like, like we've gone through, like people have been like, the bar's falling apart. Like, I think you sent me that message once, like, oh, I opened this up, it's kind of broken. I was like, man, okay, we got to figure that out. And we figured that out. People have said it's like, it's too big, it's too small. It's too sweet. It's too this. It's too that. So, and I take it back and go like, okay, what do we tweak? What do we change? Right? Like, what do we add?
Yeah,
what
you used to
remove?
change the bars out for me because I remember there'd be some batches that were like really in the beginning, like really dry or something. Like they're crumbling apart. And it's like you were just constantly fixing.
Yeah, we're constantly just trying to figure out whether it's like switching up the ingredient mix or switching up like how we process them. Like you kind of do it, and like now, like I think we've got it down pretty good. Like they still need a bit of work, but the equipment that we have, I think we've kind of like got to a point where like we've got it tuned enough. The hard part about like, especially when you talk about like bar manufacturing, the next level up from like a manufacturing perspective is a big leap. It's not like we can take these, it's not like a race car where it's like, okay, now I have like a Honda Civic and then I got like, something a little bit faster all the way up to like an F1 car, right? There's not these steps. It's kind of like, you can be here or here, and there's very little in between. And so I think that'll be kind of a big challenge for us as we grow, is like, how do we like, because to get up there, like that's a big dollar value, but how do we justify it and make sure that, this makes sense to go that route. So,
and you don't want to lose quality as you become bigger. I mean, that's something
for sure.
Like work so hard here to maintain, right? Because it's, making 5 meals versus 500 versus 1,500, like it's,
for sure.
I know you're cooking the same food, but now there's more people and there's more to manage, and you want to make sure that like everything that goes out is quality.
Yeah. I'm still pretty picky. Like I actually still mostly package them myself. Like that's usually how we kind of like cycle our stations, is usually I'm like kind of the last to see it, and like, or one of my staff, because we are picky. We're like, no, don't use this one. Don't use that one. Throw that one out. Like we actually do have a high rate of ones that we do throw out just because we're kind of picky on it. We want them to be perfect. Right.
Yeah.
So,
And you have the people that care.
Yeah.
So it's like, same for me now. It's like, I'm clearly not always back in the kitchen watching what's going on, but those people are key to like, cause they care, and, they take care of me just as much as I try to take care of them.
Yeah, for sure.
And, they're making sure that like day after day, that quality is there.
Finding good people, man, it's a challenge.
Well, and taking care of them. That's so big. Like, I know we're just a meal prep company, and I mean, obviously there's only so much we can do, but like we offer full benefits for all of our full-time employees. Like,
that's massive.
I treat them very well because I know how I would want to be treated if I was working, or when I was working, even in the oil sands. Like, I worked for some pretty shitty people, and I was like, this is not how I want to be treated, and I wouldn't want to do that to somebody else.
Yeah, no, previously I know, before I decided to go down this route, where I was working, like I managed salespeople, and like it was hard to find really great salespeople that were like passionate, that got what you're trying to do, that could convey those message. And same thing, like you got to make sure they're taken care of. You got to make sure you're doing what you can for them. There's a leadership principle. I've heard it a few times called like servant leadership. And there's some people that are really kind of like big into it. And I've listened to a few of those podcasts, and the message is basically you work for your people, right? They don't work for you, you work for them. So think about it that way. And so like, that's how I try to think of my people, is like, hey, I work for you. Like you tell me what you need, right? Like one of my staff, when I was trying to coax her to like give me more hours, she would have to like change jobs. And I was like, hey, like, you come to me with a proposal of what you want. And one of those asks was something I thought kind of minor. I'm like, no problem. Right. So it's just like, it's instead of saying like, well, I'll just pay you more. Right. It's like, you tell me what you need to make this work. And, I like, it was a phone, and I got her phone, and she was like, this is awesome. And I'm like, no problem. Like you tell me, like, I work for you. Yeah. You tell me what you need,
which is
for
funny,
you to be able to do your job.
Like, I mean, obviously I can't convey that to everybody, because it's not in everybody's blood to be that way. But I'm like, I will take care of you, like, if you're a good employee. Yeah. Like, I will do everything that I can, if you need 100%. A pay advance, or, there's even one here that like was taking the bus every day, and it was such a good employee that I was like, can I buy you like just a small car, like something, even if it's like a $1,500 beater, just so you don't have to get on the bus every day.
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a very similar thing with one of my staff. I like, one of the issues was, it was hard for her to get to one of the markets. And I was like, well, what if I pay you monthly? I give you like, kind of call it like an Uber / bus pass / whatever kind of like bonus. Right. I was like, I can take care of that. I can make that work. Right. So it's just, I think it's kind of like one of those of like, how do you just remove those pain points so they can just do their job and do it well for you? Yeah. Right. And then everybody wins, because I don't mind doing that. Right. Like, I think from the business perspective, like you look at it and like, you want to retain these good employees, but also like we're helping them kind of do what they want. And then they're motivated to work, and they love working for you. Right. Yeah. And I think that's I think is a big challenge, is a lot of businesses, like, especially, for me or for you, that we're kind of like, well, I'll say more for me is like, I'm like this tiny, so we don't have that much money to spend on people, but like, how do we make sure that we get the best people that we can? Yeah. I remember I was looking for someone, and I had 5 interviews lined up in one day. And I was like, okay, sweet. I'll be able to find someone out of the 5. I've interviewed lots of people over over my career, so I can usually get a pretty good assessment right away. 4 of them didn't show up. And I remember thinking,
for an interview,
man, yeah.
Oh, that's the story of my life since I started business 6 years ago. Like, I'm very, very lucky if 50% show up. I can arrange 10 interviews, and I'm lucky if 50% will show up. It's just, I don't know why it's like that. And it's like, why are you even answering my call or getting back to my email saying you're going to be here when they don't show? Yeah.
I mean, at least it's an obvious tell of like, okay, well, this probably is not a good fit.
For sure. Yeah.
It's hard to find good people, and I'm lucky I got some great people, and like I get compliments about them all the time, which is awesome. Like, cause like, I wear the hat, or I wear, and I'll like be somewhere, and someone like, oh, I've had your stuff. And I'm like, as soon as they say that, I'm like, where'd you get it? Who'd you know? Like I'm like,
that's the best feeling though.
Trying to, well, and I think you're probably similar of like, how did you get introduced to this? Cause I want to know. I want to know what's out there, what's working, what's not, right? And so, but I get compliments on my staff all the time, which is awesome. So, yeah.
Well, I love what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, man.
It's been amazing, and I'm happy.
I got to say, you've been a big help, and I've professed my love for you and your help before many times. So I can't do it enough.
Feelings are mutual.
Yeah.
You've done a lot for us on the back end. Not the stuff that not everybody sees, but definitely has helped our business. So definitely grateful for everything. And thanks for coming on today.
Well, thanks, man. This is fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the winner's circle. If you made it here, it means you done put in the work, dude. Congratulations. You made it way past the basics. This goes for a massive celebration. Welcome to the winner's circle.